Hello, it's the middle of September and I thought I'd do a quick video on hammers. Why on hammers? Hammers are the same, aren't they? Well, this is just the sort of aggregate of some of the hammers that I've got. Also got a load I've got to clear out of my dad's house. They're all going to be different as well. So I thought I'd take you through how to look after your hammers, what different hammers are for, and give you a sort of background to it. Right, let's start with a modern hammer. Steel hafted claw hammer. It's got red paint on it because basically I use this one at work, and if it's got red paint on it, it's mine. Don't steal it. But if you're self-employed, all your tools are yours, even if you're working for a company. This one, as you might be able to tell from all the scars and the paint on the handle, was actually road combed. I saw it in a gutter of the road, went back and picked it up. Steel half claw hammers are fairly recent. The older pattern is this, and you can see one big drawback with these is that they break, especially when the handles get a bit old, because you've got a stress razor here, you've got basically a hard straight edge, and if you use the claw and put a lot of stress on it, it breaks off. You can see exactly that's what's happened here. So if you see one of those and one of those at say a car boot sale, go for that one. Won't be telling you how to re-haft a hammer, that'll be a separate post. Here we're just looking at different shapes of hammerhead. Put that over there, come back to that, and come back to that. Let's look at these ones first. Sledgehammers. Well, I think all sledgehammers are the same, they're all different. This one's a £10 and it's a fairly modern one. It's got a cross-shaped wedge in here. Wedges are basically to keep the head on the handle. They're not glued on, although some of the modern ones, like this one with a fiberglass handle, which is a splitting maul, you can use this end, this pole, to drive wedges into your logs, and this one is your splitting side. And these are moulded in, and the tunnel inside, you can see a tunnel in this one, this is a big one, this is £14, it's belled out to both ends. So this would be the bottom of the sledgehammer, or the top if you hold it that way, and that's the other side. That goes onto the handle, and then the wedges act to spread the end of the haft, so the handle doesn't go off. More about that on that other post. So £14, £10, you can see the difference in size. And this one's a £7. This is one that I like, one that I've modified. If you look at the poles on this, you can see they're rounded, because it's basically for breaking rock, etc. You can use one of these for forging, but you tend to have a different shaped face. These ones I've flattened off with the grinder, and I use these to drive splitting wedges, not splitting wedges, high lift felling wedges, which have a wooden body to them and a aluminium wedge, because if you use one of these with a rounded pole, you basically split the wood quicker. And I use a little one because I'm a little bloke. I can't use a very big sledgehammer for a very long time. While we're on this one, you can see it's painted red because I use it at work, and you see this is a haft, a handle, I call it a haft, that's been cut down from a larger hammer. This was originally the end that the hammerhead went on. I'll put it onto here, and I've used it for years, and just this summer it started to shift, because in the drought everything got really dry, including timber, so this has started to move. This one here, while we're here, is not made of steel at all the rest are made of steel. That says Telcon H69, and that is made of bronze. And the haft has only been partially fitted to this head. More about that when we get to it. And the bronze tools like this are used in flammable atmospheres, and they're pretty uncommon. And you can see something like this, softer than steel, and the poles are belled out where it's been used to hit various things by a lot of people for a long time, and they've deformed. Different hammers are made of different things depending on what the use is. Most of them are steel, and you can see on some of these, let's see if we can find one. Somewhere here. This one here. If you get the steel too hard, it tends to chip and bits of it spoil off and they fly into the face of the wielder potentially, which is bad news. And you can see that here. The edges of that have been taken off with a file, so it's no longer sharp. The other issue you can find, if you look at on the end, you can see the various pieces are spoiled off, is that you hit very hard things with them and you create craters in the end. So if you're using it to finish or to do riveting, I'll get onto that in a minute, you don't get such a good quality of finish on your job. Right, that's not a hammer, I believe that's called a set. And basically that's used with a hammer hitting this pole on hot steel, on an anvil, somebody holding up and somebody smacking that pole, and it's used to cut steel, hot cut. So that's not a hammer. This is also not a hammer, this is an axe, and you can see on here basically how a handle is put on a head with a longitudinal wedge and then cross wedges, because you've got to swell this end out to make it so that the end of the haft, which has had to go through the eye of the axe head or the hammer head, is larger diameter than the centre of the hole in the head, the aperture. If you remember, I said a little minute ago that it's belled out at both ends. That's the same with axes. Just for shits and giggles, this is an old-fashioned English felling axe. It's an Elwell. This came from my grandfather and has had relatively little use. And you can see it started to move, and he's put a nail in there just to keep it going for another day, I guess. So that would have to be brought down the haft and refitted to this head. You can see this one only has an edge, it hasn't got a striking pole, which is that for occasional use on wedges opposite to the edge. And that's a general pattern felling axe, and that's basically Kent pattern. These ones like this tend to be older, but Elwell dates it to the 20th century, probably the early years. Now we get on to hammers. So this one here, again found in the road, and this is a Copperhide Mallet. I've always wanted to buy one, but they're expensive because of the copper, and I've used that a lot since I acquired it. You can see you've got a hide end on this end and a copper end on that end, and that's so you hit your job, so you're truing a crankshaft when you don't mark it, because it's softer than the material that you're hitting, but you see it deforms. Right, this one is a comb hammer, and you've got a straight pole on this end, and this end you have a comb which goes in here, and you can reverse the comb. This one's very worn, and that's used for cleaning up bricks or for doing masonry work on bricks, especially old red rubbers. You can actually shape them. And when it's new, this is a newer one, they look like this, which is why it's called a comb hammer. And you can see how it fits in, and it butts up against here so it doesn't move. They're a bit of a bugger to get out if they're fitted properly. This one has a short handle on it, which is very loose and really needs redoing. I tend to use it with a very short handle because it's quite a heavy head and it's quite long. This is also for rock. This is a Geologist hammer, and this was £3 at a car boot sale. I buy a lot of my hammers from car boot sales, and it's got a maker's name which I can't quite read, but it's quite a nice hammer. And this is a fairly modern one since we went over to the EU, and it's an 800 gram, which is what it says there, 800. This end for splitting rocks, and this end is a chisel end, and this end is a flat pole. This one looks similar, but this is a forging hammer, and this is basically used to strike metal, spread it and shape it, and this end spreads it further. And you can see it's got a rounded edge on it, a face on it, and you can see that the faces have been smoothed off so that you don't nick or mark your work, because if you put nicks in it, it's more likely to break when you fold it. And this one, like a lot of hammers, it's got a maker's name on it, and it's got a crow's foot, which is the old UK Armed Forces or War Department sign. And it says Braids, which is the maker, and it's dated 1941. So that was made during World War II, when our Queen, who died yesterday, was but a girl. This one again looks similar, but this is a coal hammer, and it's got a makeshift haft on it. A little bit more about this later, and you can see that this hasn't got any wedges in it at all to spread the end, and it's very loose. And this has got a maker's name on it, and also a crow's foot, and this says 1948, and I think that says Birmingham, and that again was from a car boot sale for a couple of quid. That's a big lump of stuff, and you can see the sharpness of that end compared with this one. Okay, when you get to smaller hammers, you don't have poles. That's a pole, and the one on the axe is a pole. You have a peen, so this is a flat peen, and this is a cross peen because it runs crosswise. Over here you have a ball peen hammer. A little bit more about those later, because you've got a flat peen and a ball peen. You can have hammers with two flat peens, like this one. This one I've used for forging, using this face, but if you look at this face, you see it's very scarred. I've been using this one to break stones and flatten hardcore, but I cleaned this one up for an impromptu bit of forging I did when I couldn't find this one. This one is also lighter, and the haft on this one is cut down from a sledge haft that broke. And this one I've shaved down because I'm a little guy with a little hand, and for using this for a reasonable amount of time, this fits my hand better. And also, if you've got a slender haft, it tends to flex, and you get less fatigue when you're using it for a long time. This one here, which has been re-hafted by someone a long time ago, the wrong way up. See, it says solid cast steel, 16 ounce. Should be that way up. Does it matter? Well, not really. And this is Buck and Hickman, which used to be a very good maker from somewhere up north. It's got various other marks on it, and someone has used this side of it to hit something very hard. But this side's escaped. That's got a drill mark on it. So I reckon with this drill mark here, it's been in the hands of an apprentice at some point, and he's got bored, and he's been in the drill press, and he's put little drill marks in it. You can see what's happening here. When you're using a hammer, sometimes you miss. Practice is good, but occasionally something happens and you overreach and you get this sort of damage. The damage on here, on this face, which is the face that's most used, I guess, is more than that face. And basically you take out the damage, because if you get a nick in here, it acts as a stress razor, and the haft is more likely to break if you hit something hard. So you shave it down. If you've got a good fit of the head on the haft, it won't move. And you can also see how this one's bent. It's flexed, and that basically means that you haven't got the issues with fatigue that you would have with a more solid handle. like this one. This is a big fat handle. We'll be back to him in a little minute. So that is a ball peen hammer, and I'm going to break that there and then come back to more ball peen hammers.